A year later, Andrew Stanton returned to the director's chair to create WALL-E. Set hundreds of years after today, Earth is now a planet filled with nothing but junk with a population of 0. That is, if you don't count on a robot that is bored out of his mind, codenamed Wall-E. One day, a spaceship comes down to Earth and a more high-tech robot codenamed Eve gets out to find a plant to signal that it's okay to live in Earth now, which she did in Wall-E's junk collection. At the same time, the old robot starts to have feelings for this new visitor and even follows her back to a ginormous ship named Axiom, where all the humans are and they look like they've been taking a daily dose of McDonald's with a side order of KFC. Now this was probably something that I should have mentioned long ago, but I think now's the best time for me to talk about it. Actually, no, not even. Well, at least I won't say it. I think I'll let Andrew fill you guys in on this.
In the summer of 1994, there was a lunch. Me, John Lasseter, Pete Docter, the late Joe Ranft, all sat down. Toy Story was almost complete. And we thought, well, geez, if we're going to make another movie, we got to get started now. So at that lunch, we knocked around a bunch of ideas that eventually became A Bug's Life, Monsters Incorporated, Finding Nemo. And the last one we talked about that day was the story of a robot named Wall-E.
So Andrew and Pete Docter started making the film in 1995 under the name Trash Planet. But they were stuck with a big problem. What kind of story can they make about a robot in an empty world? 2 months after thinking of the idea, Pete pretty much gave up on it and decided to go and make Monsters, Inc. Fast forward in 2002, when Andrew finished making Finding Nemo, he went back to write on Wall-E again. But this time with some good initial ideas for it, including finding a plant and a love story. Originally, instead of having beyond overweight humans, they were supposed to be aliens that look like flubber and speaking in blah blah blah. Also, instead of living in a world ruled by commercialism, they lived in a world that would work like ancient Greece with a royal family. I know how you feel, people. This would have been a completely different movie if they kept that idea. Anyways, at one point, Andrew thought that this idea was a little too weird and maybe even unappealing. So by time, the alien goose slowly but surely turned into humans by first making them talk in English instead of blah blah blah, then giving them ears and a nose for the audience to relate, and then added in the works like small fingers and legs. To help the Pixar crew understand how to tell a story visually and keeping the dialogue at a minimum, they would watch tons of Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton films for like a year and a half every day. And I think they went on to watch all of them. One of Andrew's biggest goals of the movie was to make the cinematography look as real as possible, like make it look like it was filmed out of a film camera from the 70s. To help them on that task, they brought in film legends Dennis Muren and Roger Deakins to understand not only how a camera looks at something with a background, but also how lighting and atmosphere works in the real world as well. They even brought in an old Panavision camera and filmed around to get some reference shots. To know how to animate the robots, mostly Wall-E, the animators went to study some trash compactors, robots in NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, including the Mars rover, and even brought in a bomb detector to see how it would move. As you can see, it moves very awkwardly. For the sounds of the movie, they hired Ben Burt, who previously worked on all 6 of the Star Wars films. When he finished working on the last film, Episode 3, he vowed that he would never work on a film that involved robots again. But when Pixar came in and told him about Wall-E and that he has to voice most of the robots, he was like, "Never mind, I take it back, the more robots the better." When working on it, Ben recorded a total of 2,500 sounds, twice the number of sounds he recorded when working on one Star Wars film. Some of the sounds that were recorded were old wacky machines that were used to create many of the sound effects in classic Disney shorts. To promote the film, Walt Disney Imagineering created an animatronic WALL-E and popped up in a few places like at Disney, the Seattle Center, the Franklin Institute, and more. It could have been a meet and greet character around the Disney parks, but because the thing weighs about 700 pounds and it would be hell if it would run over someone's foot, they decided to put him on the side. When it was released on June 7th, 2008, it became a total success. The critics praised the film like crazy by saying that with the help of its lighthearted tone and amazing visuals, WALL-E is a very charming film that will forever be timeless. When it comes to the box office, it made more than almost $224 million domestically and more than $521 million worldwide. After its release, WALL-E walked away with tons of awards and nominations like a Grammy, a Golden Globe, a BAFTA, and 6 Oscar nominations for Best Original Score, Best Original Song for Down to Earth, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, Best Original Writing, and, the one that it won, Best Animated Feature, making this, alongside Beauty and the Beast, the animated feature with the most Oscar nominations. You know what? I think for the next films, I won't mention that Pixar won an Oscar for Best Animated Feature, because at this point, Pixar winning that category is starting to be as surprising as looking up at the sky and realizing that it's blue. In the same year as the movie's release, Empire had an online poll, and WALL-E ended up number 63 on their 100 greatest movie characters. In 2010, Time magazine put WALL-E at number 1 in their top 10 movies of the 2000s. No. Not just animated movies, but movies in general, putting it over films like The Lord of the Rings, Avatar, and Slumdog Millionaire. In 2009, seeing that Andrew and John made their directorial comeback, it's time for Pete Docter to return with Up. It's the story of Carl Fredricksen, a widowed old man whose life has been told in 8 of the most romantic and saddest minutes ever put on film. He was about to be forced out of his house because he knocked out a person with his cane, but he would take none of that. So what does he do? He takes thousands upon thousands of balloons to make his house fly and heads out to South America, where he promised his deceased wife that they would move to Paradise Falls and live there for the rest of their lives. Upon the way, Russell, a wilderness explorer, got caught on the balcony, and now they both head out to Paradise Falls. The idea all started when Pete drew a picture of a grouchy old man holding a lot of happy balloons. He looked at it and thought to himself, what if those balloons made the man fly? Oh, no, even better. What if they made his house fly? So when he started writing in 2004, he went to get help from 3 legendary Disney veterans, Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnston, and Joe Grant. Not only would they help Pete out on the script, but also they all created a friendship with Pete and told him stories about their times working with Uncle Walt until each of them would pass away. To make the character Carl, Pete inspired him from people like Spencer Tracy, Walter Matthau, and James Whitmore to get that special charm that old grumpy people have. You know, the kind that when a normal person does it, it seems very rude, but when an old man does it, it seems cute because, you know, they're old. Originally, instead of going to Paradise Falls, Carl wanted to go, well, up there with his wife. I think the problem speaks for itself. So to add something in the plot, they made him go to South America to give Carl a goal he wanted to achieve with Ellie, his dead wife, and to have a place where he would be stuck with a kid. Charles Muntz, Carl's childhood hero he would meet in South America, and, spoiler alert, the villain of the film, was named after a real Disney villain named Charles Mintz, an executive at Universal Pictures during the 20s who took away a cartoon character named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit from a young animator you may know named Walt Disney. For the voice of Russell, they got a kid named Jordan Nagai, who would have probably never guessed that he would get the part in the first place. You see, it was his older brother, Hunter, who went to go audition for the part, and Jordan decided to tag along. And out of the 400 kids that went to audition, Jordan was the one who stood out from the crowd. There are only 2 words I can think of after Up would be released for Hunter and Jordan: sibling rivalry. And by the way, if you think Russell is Asian because Jordan is as well, you'd actually be wrong, but good guess though. Russell was actually modeled after animator Peter Song, who was also the voice of Emile in Ratatouille. To create Paradise Falls and the jungle around it, Pete and 11 other animators went out to Venezuela and Tempoy to climb Monte Roraima and the real-life Paradise Falls, Angel Falls, which coincidentally enough were also the same place where Disney animators filmed the background of dinosaurs. To promote the film, Pixar made 3 one-minute long shorts called Episodes, where we see Carl and Russell in the jungle, which could be seen in iTunes and YouTube. It was the first ever animated feature film, and even the first 3D film to open at the Cannes Film Festival, which when the movie was over, the audience was just dead silent. Moments later, a huge standing ovation was given. When it was released on May 29th, 2009, the critics reacted the same way as the audience in Cannes by saying that the movie is fantastic for its witty humor, exciting moments, and has a lot of heartfelt depth to it. In terms of the box office, it got $293 million domestically and more than $731 million worldwide. When it comes to Up's awards, it became the 9th film to win an Oscar, a Golden Globe, and a Grammy for its score alongside Jaws, Aladdin, Star Wars, Beauty and the Beast, and E.T. The other awards, including the ones for Best Original Score and Best Animated Feature, it got 2 Golden Globes, 2 BAFTAs, 2 Annies, and 2 Oscars with 3 other nominations, which were Best Sound Editing, Best Writing, and Best Picture. Yes, Best Overall Motion Picture of the Year, making Up the second animated feature nominated for that after Beauty and the Beast. But to be fair, the only reason why it's there was because the Academy boosted the number of nominations of that from 5 to 10. I think if they kept it at 5, Up wouldn't be in there. You could say I'm wrong, but I'm just thinking out loud here, like maybe it would have, you never know. Anyways, at Disney's California Adventure at Disneyland, they redecorated the Redwood Creek Challenge Trial Play area from a Brother Bear theme to a Wilderness Explorer theme, which includes its own show, and you can meet Russell and Doug there as well. In 2010, Pixar brought back their version of the one that started it all with Toy Story 3. Set about a decade after the second film, which is actually the time between the release of that movie and this one, Andy is going to college and the toys are worried that they would never be played with again. But that problem seemed to be solved after they all got accidentally donated to the Sunnyside Daycare, where they expected to be played with like this, but they ended up being played with like this. Now the toys have to find a way to escape Sunnyside and return to Andy. Back in 2004, when Disney and Pixar were fighting like a couple on the edge of divorce, and when Circle 7 was around, the short-lived animation studio had their own idea of what Toy Story 3 would be. Now, Circle 7's Toy Story 3 would be about Buzz Lightyear having a malfunction. They sent him to Taiwan where he would be fixed, but it turned out that there are thousands of Buzz Lightyears and other toys being shipped to Taiwan as well, and what they do there is just destroy the old one and replace them with a new one. So it would be up to Woody and the gang to go to Taiwan and save Buzz from total destruction. However, in 2006, when Disney and Pixar set aside their differences with Bob Iger being the peacemaker, not only did they shut down the studio, but the project went out the window as well. In 2007, when they decided to make a full legit Toy Story 3, Since John Lasseter was too busy to make the movie I'll be talking about after this one, John and Ed Catmull decided to put Lee Unkrich as the sole director of the film. This is going to be a toughie for Lee because usually he was always the co-director with someone else when he did Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., and Finding Nemo. When it comes to writing and storyboarding, it took the crew more than 2.5 years to add and remove stuff just to settle with a final script. What I mean by stuff is mostly ideas from the previous films, like the opening scene where Woody and Buzz try to stop the evil Dr. Porkchop was an idea that got scrapped from the first movie, or the character Bo Peep had to be removed from the film because... how do I say this without spoiling the ending? Oh, I got it! At the end of the movie, there's a big fire involved, and since she's made of porcelain, I don't think she'd make it as long as the other toys. Anyways, the idea of Lotso goes all the way back to 1990 when they wanted to do that Tin Toy Christmas special. They wanted to make a teddy bear that was leading a gang of toys that were never played with as the antagonist of the short. A few years later, John wanted to use Lotso in the first Toy Story, but because of the limited technology they had, they couldn't make his fur look good. But he still made an appearance in that movie.
Everybody hear me? Up on the shelf, can you hear me? Great!
Also, while they were storyboarding the film, Lee wanted to make Lotso a Care Bear, which would have been funny to see a Care Bear in the clan of the Disney villains, but the idea was scrapped when the storyboards were done. To make the scene where the toys try to escape Sunnyside, the crew had to watch a buttload of prison films like The Great Escape or Escape from Alcatraz. According to Lee, there's a good chance that they have practically seen every single prison movie. Because that, unfortunately, Jim Varney, who voiced Slinky Dog in the first two Toy Story films, passed away in 2000, Pixar went to hire a good friend of his, Blake Clark, to replace his voice.
You know, Lee took me really by surprise and I kind of choked up. He said, I think Jim would have been proud, so I didn't see that coming and I got tears in my eyes.
When they started on the animation, they found that something's wrong. Because that their technology is way more advanced than it was in 1999, they weren't able to edit the old 3D models of characters like Woody and Buzz, which pretty much means that they had to remake them from the top. It doesn't really help considering that including the human characters, the toys, and more, they had to make a total of 302 characters in the movie, including Totoro! Yay! When making Toy Story 3, they already knew how to animate the hard things like water and fur, but even when the animators thought that fur would be a challenge for them, there was something much more difficult and much more challenging to animate than they could possibly ever imagine. Trash bags. No, really, it apparently took them weeks just to make them look good. Kind of weird considering that there must have been literally tons made in WALL-E. Anyways, not only is this the first Pixar film to be released in IMAX, but it's also the first feature to be made in Dolby Surround 7.1, which is even more surround sound because now you have 3 speakers in the front, 1 on each side of you, and 2 that are right behind you. When it was released on June 18th, 2010, the critics gave it as much praise as the first 2 films, saying that this is one of those really rare sequels that end up being spectacular as the previous films. But that's pretty much nothing compared to how they did at the box office. It managed to get $415 million domestically and a grand total of $1,063 million worldwide. Not only does it make it the highest grossing film of 2010, but it also broke 3 world records like the first ever animated feature film to pass $1 billion worldwide, which was achieved on August 27th, 2010. It made Disney the first ever company with 2 films earning more than $1 billion at the box office in that year, the other being Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, and most importantly, as of 2012, the highest grossing animated film of all times. It got tons of awards, mostly for Best Animated Feature and Best Song for We Belong Together, but at the Oscars, It won 2 for the ones I already mentioned, and nominated for Best Sound Editing, Best Adapted Writing, and Best Picture. On August 17th, 2010, Disney made an entire themed land based on the franchise called Toy Story Playland in Walt Disney Studios Park in Disneyland Paris, and a similar one simply called Toy Story Land at Hong Kong Disneyland, where it includes characters that are the rides like the Toy Soldier Parachute Drop, the Slinky Dog Spin, and this piece of insanity called the RC Racer. In 2011, Pixar started to make some Toy Story Toons, which are animated shorts set after Toy Story 3. The first one, Hawaiian Vacation, was done by Pixar themselves, but the following ones, like Small Fry and Partysaurus Rex, were done by Pixar Canada, aka the Glenn McQueen Pixar Animation Center. It's an animation studio made by, of course, Pixar in Vancouver, BC, that's in charge of making their animated shorts and TV specials that would include their popular characters.
Los años pasarán, lo nuestro no morirá. Lo vas a ver, mejor tener un buen amigo en mí. Hay un amigo en mí, un buen amigo en mí. Hay un amigo en mí.